They laughed when I said I'd make it on my own. Now they're furious that I did. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emily Turner, and for a long time, I believed I had the perfect life. I had a husband who said he loved me, parents who I thought cared for me, and a sister who was like my best friend. We spent weekends together, had family dinners every Sunday, and I truly believed they would always stand by me no matter what happened. But life has a way of showing you who really loves you, and who only pretends to. It started small, little cracks that I didn't want to notice. My husband, Ryan, became distant, working late and keeping his phone locked. My sister, Hannah, always seemed overly interested in how Ryan was doing. My parents, meanwhile, kept telling me to be patient and not overthink. So I stayed quiet, pretending everything was fine, even though deep down, I knew something was wrong. One night, Ryan didn't come home. I called, texted, even tried his office, but no answer. The next morning, he walked in as if nothing happened. When I asked where he was, he snapped at me for being controlling. That was the first time he ever raised his voice like that. I remember standing there, shaking, realizing the man I married wasn't the same anymore. Days turned into weeks, and the silence between us grew heavier. I tried to fix things, but he didn't want to talk. He stopped wearing his wedding ring. He started sleeping on the couch. When I finally found out the truth, when everything came crashing down, it felt like someone ripped the ground from under me. But that part of the story will come later. For now, I want you to understand what betrayal feels like before it even fully happens. It's not just about one big event. It's a slow, painful awareness that the people you trust the most are slowly turning their backs on you. That's what happened to me. When things got tense between Ryan and me, I turned to my family, thinking they'd listen. But instead of support, I got judgment. My mom said I was too emotional. My dad said I needed to be a better wife. Even Hannah told me to let him have some space. It was like they were all reading from the same script, and I was the problem. That night, I sat alone in the dark, trying to make sense of it all. I kept wondering what I did wrong. I had given everything, my time, my energy, my love, to people who couldn't even see how broken I was. That was the night I realized something deep inside me. I had no one but myself. It hurt. It still does sometimes. But that was also the moment I decided that if no one was going to stand by me, I'd learn to stand alone. I spent years helping Ryan build his contracting business from the ground up. I handled the paperwork, the clients, the accounts, everything behind the scenes. He was the face of it, but I was the backbone. I didn't mind because I believed we were a team. Every late night and every weekend I spent supporting him felt worth it because I thought we were working toward the same dream. But everything I believed in came crashing down one ordinary afternoon. I had left work early that day to surprise Ryan with lunch. I remember feeling excited, thinking maybe this small gesture could help fix whatever distance had grown between us. When I reached his office, his car was there, but the door was locked. I used my spare key, something I hadn't done in months. What I saw next is something I'll never forget. Ryan was there, with my sister, Hannah. They weren't talking. They were holding each other. And the look on their faces wasn't one of shock or guilt. It was comfort, like they had done it before. I froze in the doorway, unable to move. Hannah turned first, her eyes wide, lips trembling, but no words came out. Ryan didn't even look ashamed. He just sighed and muttered, "You weren't supposed to see this yet." I didn't even know what that meant. My whole body went numb. My hands shook, and my voice cracked when I finally managed to ask, "How long?" He shrugged, looking me right in the eye, and said, "Long enough for you to notice if you actually paid attention." Then he added something that burned into my mind forever. "You made it easy. You're always busy with your boring job." That was the moment something inside me broke. It wasn't just betrayal. It was cruelty. I looked at my sister, the same girl who used to sleep beside me during thunderstorms, and she couldn't even meet my eyes. All she whispered was, "I didn't mean for it to happen." I walked out without saying another word. I drove straight to my parents' house, crying so hard I could barely see the road. I needed them. I needed someone to tell me it would be okay. But when I told them what happened, their reaction made the pain even worse. My dad sat in silence, looking uncomfortable. My mom said softly, "Honey, I know it hurts, but family comes first. You have to forgive them." I stared at her, thinking I must have heard wrong. Forgive them? For sleeping together behind my back? For breaking my marriage and my trust? She kept saying things like, "Hannah's your sister, and Ryan made a mistake. Don't throw your life away over this." My father just nodded. It felt like I was standing in front of strangers. They weren't angry at them. They were disappointed in me for not accepting it. That night, I left their house without looking back. I drove aimlessly until the sun set. My world had collapsed in one day. My husband, my sister, my parents. That was the day I stopped believing in family. After everything fell apart, I packed what little I could fit into one suitcase, and there wasn't much to take, just a few clothes, some photos, and my laptop. I didn't have anywhere to go, but I couldn't stay in that house another second. Every corner of it felt poisoned by lies. I thought my parents might at least let me stay with them for a while, but when I called, my mother said the guest room was already occupied. I didn't understand at first, but then she said it. Ryan and Hannah had moved in. She claimed it was temporary, that they just needed a place until they figured things out. I stood there with the phone to my ear, speechless. They gave my cheating husband and my sister a home, while I had nowhere to sleep. That moment hit me harder than anything else. I realized I had been replaced, not just as a wife, but as a daughter. My parents didn't even try to hide their choice. They said, "You're strong, Emily. You'll find your way." As if strength was supposed to make up for betrayal. For the next few nights, I slept in my car. I parked in quiet places, outside grocery stores, near parks, anywhere I felt safe enough to close my eyes for a few hours. I cried a lot during those nights. I cried for the person I used to be, for the home I lost, for the love that turned into humiliation. But no one came to check on me. No one called. It was like I had disappeared from their world completely. In the mornings, I washed up in gas station bathrooms and tried to look normal before going to work. I didn't tell anyone what was happening. I didn't want pity. I told myself that if I just kept going, things would get better eventually. But every time I thought about how Ryan and Hannah were living comfortably under my parents' roof, I felt my chest tighten. It was the kind of pain that doesn't go away. It just changes shape. One evening, I drove past my parents' house. I saw Ryan's truck in the driveway, the same spot where mine used to be. The lights were on inside. I could see silhouettes through the window, my family sitting around the dinner table. My family without me. I didn't stay long. I drove off before the tears blurred my vision. That night, sitting alone in my car, I realized no one was coming to save me. I had spent my whole life believing that love meant loyalty, that family meant protection. But I was wrong. People love you as long as it's convenient. When it's not, they replace you. Something inside me shifted that night. I stopped waiting for anyone to choose me. I stopped hoping for apologies that would never come. I promised myself I would build something new, something that belonged only to me. After a few weeks of sleeping in my car, I found a tiny apartment on the edge of town. It wasn't much, just one small room with a leaky faucet and thin walls, but it was mine. It felt strange at first, being completely alone. The silence used to scare me, but soon it became something I started to value. No one was yelling. No one was judging. I could finally breathe. I found a job as a medical billing specialist at a local clinic. It didn't pay much, but it was enough to survive. I took every extra shift I could get, working late into the night, even on weekends. The work was tiring, but it gave me purpose. Each paycheck, I put a little money aside. Even if it was just $20, I saved it. It became a quiet promise to myself, a way to rebuild my life piece by piece. When I wasn't working, I studied. I found free courses online, then paid for certifications once I could afford them. There were nights when my eyes burned from staring at the screen too long, but I refused to stop. While everyone else slept, I was learning. I didn't tell anyone. No one asked anyway. My parents didn't call, my sister didn't text, and I didn't reach out either. The silence between us became permanent, and honestly, I liked it that way. Over time, I started to feel stronger. I was promoted to senior billing coordinator after a year. Then, a year later, I moved to a bigger company in the city. The pay doubled, and for the first time, I could afford a little more than just rent and bills. I bought new furniture, small things that made the apartment feel like home. Each item reminded me that I was doing this on my own. People at work saw me as dependable. They didn't know my story, and I didn't share it. I had learned that peace comes from privacy. The woman who once cried herself to sleep now walked with quiet confidence. I still had bad days, of course, but they no longer broke me. Instead, they fueled me. Every rejection, every lonely night, every cruel word from the past, it all became motivation. Years passed, and not once did I hear from Ryan or Hannah. My parents only sent one Christmas card the first year, but after I didn't reply, they stopped. I thought it would hurt, but it didn't. The silence became a wall between me and everything that once destroyed me. Behind that wall, I rebuilt myself. By the 5th year, I had a stable career, savings in the bank, and a quiet kind of happiness that didn't depend on anyone else. I wasn't rich, but I was proud. Every step I took was proof that I didn't need their approval. What they took from me, I replaced with my own effort. They thought they broke me, but all they really did was push me to rise in silence. And one day, they would see what that silence had built. And no matter how hard it got, I would never beg for love again. 5 years passed before I realized how far I had come. The days of crying in my car and worrying about rent were behind me. I had built a quiet, steady life for myself, one that no one could take away. I still worked hard, still saved every dollar I could, but now it wasn't just about surviving. It was about building a future that belonged only to me. I remember the day I decided to buy a house. It started like any other morning. I was sitting in my apartment, drinking coffee before work, when I looked around and realized I had outgrown the space. The walls that once gave me comfort now felt too small. I wanted more room to breathe, more light, more peace. So, after months of checking my bank balance and calculating every expense, I decided it was time. Walking into that real estate office was one of the most powerful moments of my life. The agent greeted me with a smile, and for once, I didn't feel like a woman trying to prove herself. I felt ready. I had spent years preparing for this moment. When the agent asked what kind of home I was looking for, I told her I wanted something simple but peaceful, a place that felt safe. After weeks of searching, I found it. A small 2-story house on the edge of a quiet neighborhood, with a front porch and a big oak tree in the yard. It wasn't luxurious or fancy, but the moment I stepped inside, I knew it was the one. The floors creaked softly under my feet, the sunlight spilled across the living room, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of belonging. Signing the papers felt surreal. I had done it entirely on my own. No one helped me. No one even knew. It was just me, sitting across from the realtor, my hands slightly trembling as I signed my name on the final document. When she slid the keys across the table, I held them tight, unable to speak. My eyes filled with tears, not from sadness but from pride. That evening, I stood in front of my new home, looking up at it in silence. The air smelled like rain, and the world felt calm. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, hearing the soft echo of my own footsteps. It felt empty, but in a good way, like a blank page waiting for me to write a new chapter. I sat down on the floor with a cup of tea and let myself cry. Not because I missed anyone, but because I finally understood something important. I had been broken, abandoned, and replaced. But I had rebuilt myself piece by piece, until I created a life that no one could control. The girl they once pitted was gone. In her place was a woman who found something greater than love or approval, peace. It had only been a week since I moved into my new house when the first call came. The number on my screen made my stomach tighten. It was Hannah. I hadn't heard her voice in 5 years. For a second, I thought it was a mistake. But curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. Her tone was cheerful, overly sweet, the kind of voice people use when they want something. "Hey, Em. It's been forever. I just wanted to check in, see how you've been." I didn't say much, just listened. She went on about how everyone missed me and how she'd been thinking about me lately. But there was something fake in her voice, like she was trying too hard. Then she slipped it in casually. "So, I heard you bought a house. That's amazing, Em. Someone saw you at the real estate office." My heart sank, not because she knew, but because I suddenly understood why she was calling. It wasn't about missing me. It was about curiosity, about control. She wanted to know how I had managed to do it without them. I kept my voice calm. "Yeah, I did. It's small, but it's home." There was a pause on her end, then a forced laugh. "Wow, good for you. We should all get together soon." I didn't respond. I just told her I was busy and ended the call. But I knew that conversation wouldn't be the last. A few days later, my parents called. My mom's voice was warm and sweet, almost like old times. "Emily, honey, we heard the great news. You bought a house. That's so wonderful. We're so proud of you." I could hear my dad in the background saying, "That's our girl." For a brief second, I almost wanted to believe them, but something in their tone didn't feel right. It wasn't genuine pride. It was surprise mixed with discomfort. They weren't happy for me. They were shocked that I had done something without them. Then my mom said, "Maybe we can all come visit, see the new place and celebrate together." My stomach turned. The idea of them in my home, walking through the rooms I had built from nothing, made me uneasy. I knew they didn't want to celebrate. They wanted to see what I had and figure out how I'd managed it. I smiled through the phone and said, "Maybe another time. I'm still settling in." My mom tried to insist, saying they could help me decorate or bring food, but I politely refused. The call ended soon after, and I sat in silence for a long time. It was strange hearing from them after all those years. They had ignored me when I had nothing, and now, the moment I stood on my own 2 feet, they suddenly remembered me. Their voices were full of excitement, but not the kind that comes from love. It was the kind that comes from envy. That night, I sat on my porch, watching the lights of my neighborhood flicker in the distance. I knew this peace I had built was fragile, and they were already trying to walk back into my life. But I also knew something else. I wasn't the same woman they left behind. This time, they couldn't use guilt or kindness to pull me back. They could call all they wanted. I wasn't opening the door so easily again. And that peace, I knew, was worth everything I had lost. A few days after their calls, I made a decision that even surprised me. I invited them all over, my parents, Hannah, and Ryan. I wasn't doing it to reconnect or forgive. I wanted closure. For years, I had carried the weight of their betrayal, and now that I finally had something of my own, I wanted to face them one last time, not out of anger, but out of peace. I cleaned the house that morning, not because I wanted to impress them, but because it mattered to me. Everything inside that home was something I had earned. Every chair, every dish, every plant had a story behind it. It was a reminder that I had survived without any of them. When I looked around, I didn't see emptiness anymore. I saw strength. They arrived right on time. My mom walked in first, her face full of forced cheer. "Oh, Emily, this place is beautiful." My dad nodded behind her, scanning the room like he was trying to take in every detail. Then Hannah stepped in, holding Ryan's arm. The sight of them together still stung a little, but I kept my face calm. Hannah looked around, her eyes wide. "You did this all by yourself?" she asked, almost in disbelief. I simply nodded. "Every bit of it," I said. She gave a small, awkward smile, but her eyes were uneasy. Ryan didn't smile at all. He just looked around and smirked, saying, "You must have gotten lucky." I turned toward the kitchen counter and began pouring coffee into the new ceramic mugs I had bought a week earlier. I handed them out one by one, calm and steady. Then I looked up and said softly, "Luck had nothing to do with it. Just hard work, betrayal, and lessons learned." The room went silent. My mom shifted uncomfortably. My dad cleared his throat. No one looked at me directly. Ryan leaned back on the couch, pretending not to care, but I could see the tightness in his jaw. Hannah just stared at her cup, pretending to be interested in the pattern. I sat down across from them and asked how they'd been. My mother started talking about how things had been difficult lately, how Ryan's business wasn't doing well, and how Hannah had been helping out where she could. I listened quietly, not saying much. The same people who once turned their backs on me were now sitting in my living room, acting as if nothing had happened. After a while, my dad said, "We're proud of you, Emily. You really pulled through." I smiled faintly and replied, "Yes, I did." That was all I said. There was nothing else to add. They could dress it up however they wanted, but we all knew what this visit really was about. They tried to make small talk, but it didn't work. The energy in the room was heavy, uncomfortable. My mother kept glancing around like she was trying to measure the value of everything. Hannah avoided my eyes completely. Ryan looked restless, like he couldn't wait to leave. As they finished their coffee, I stood up and said, "I'm glad you all came." And I meant it. I needed this, to see them one last time, not as the broken woman they once abandoned, but as the person who had rebuilt her life without them. When they left, I closed the door behind them and leaned against it for a moment, breathing in the quiet. The silence that followed wasn't lonely anymore. It was peaceful. They sat quietly for a few minutes after finishing their coffee, pretending to enjoy the visit. I could tell they were uncomfortable, but none of them wanted to leave just yet. I had a feeling there was another reason they came, and I didn't have to wait long to find out. My father was the first to speak. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and said in a calm voice, "Emily, we're all really proud of you. You've done so well for yourself. And, well, your sister's been having a tough time lately." He paused for a moment, then added, "Ryan's business hasn't been doing great. They fell behind on rent. We were wondering if maybe you could help them out a little, just until they get back on their feet." For a second, I just looked at him. I wanted to make sure I heard him right. Help them? The same people who had left me with nothing? Before I could speak, my mother jumped in, smiling softly, as if she was trying to make it sound reasonable. "You've always been the responsible one, Emma. You've got such a good heart. Maybe you can lend a hand. You know, family should help each other." Her words made my chest tighten, but not from pain. This time, it was from anger that had been buried for years. I set my cup down gently and looked at both of them. "You all chose your side when I had nothing," I said quietly. "Now I choose mine." The room fell completely silent. My mother blinked a few times, clearly not expecting that response. My dad looked down, avoiding my eyes. Then Hannah finally spoke up, her voice soft but full of guilt and manipulation all at once. "Em, come on. It's been years. We were young and I've changed. You can't hold on to this forever. Family should forgive each other." I turned to her and met her eyes for the first time that day. She looked smaller than I remembered, but I didn't feel pity. I felt clarity. "You weren't family," I said, my voice steady. "Not when you were sleeping with my husband." Her face went pale. My mom gasped, whispering, "Emily," as if I had said something terrible. But I wasn't going to sit in silence anymore. "You all watched me fall apart, and none of you cared. You didn't call. You didn't check on me. You chose comfort over conscience. Now you want my help because you've run out of luck." No one had an answer. My father tried to speak, but his words stumbled. Ryan just stared at the floor, his jaw tight, like a man who finally had to face the consequences of his own choices. Hannah's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel sorry. I had cried enough for everyone already. I stood up and walked to the door, my voice calm but final. "I'm not doing this again," I said. "You made your choices. I made mine. They sat frozen for a moment, realizing I wasn't going to change my mind. Finally, they all got up slowly, one by one. My mother tried to say something before leaving, but I didn't let her finish. I opened the door and waited. When they walked out, I didn't feel guilt or sadness. I felt peace. The kind of peace that only comes when you finally stop trying to fix what was never yours to fix. For the first time, they saw the woman they had underestimated, and she wasn't bending anymore. For the first time, I didn't feel small in their presence. I felt free. The silence in the room felt heavy after Emily's words. No one dared to move. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes glued to the floor. For years, he had always been the one in control, the one who spoke with confidence. But now, all that confidence was gone. He looked small, weak even. After a long pause, he finally muttered, "Emily, I'm sorry." His voice was quiet, almost uncertain. It was the first time she had ever heard him sound like that, but the words meant nothing now. She didn't feel anger anymore, and she didn't feel satisfaction either. She simply felt done. All the energy she once wasted on tears, on wondering why she wasn't enough, was gone. She had already healed, and their guilt couldn't touch her anymore. She stood up slowly, straightened her posture, and looked at each of them one last time. Her parents avoided her eyes, clearly ashamed but still too proud to admit their role in everything. Hannah sat frozen, her face pale, hands trembling slightly. Emily could almost feel the memories rushing through her sister's mind, the betrayal, the lies, the smugness she once had. Without raising her voice, Emily walked toward the door. She placed her hand on the knob and said, "You can all leave now." Her tone wasn't harsh or loud. It was calm, controlled, and final, the kind of calm that comes only when you know you've already won. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then her mother started crying softly. "Emily, please don't do this," she said, wiping her tears. "We're still your family." But Emily didn't respond. She had already said everything that needed to be said. She simply opened the door wider and waited. Hannah stood up next, her face red with humiliation. She tried to say something but couldn't form the words. Her pride had been shattered. For the first time, she understood what it felt like to be powerless in front of someone she had once looked down on. She grabbed her bag and hurried out without looking back. Ryan followed, his shoulders slumped, still unable to meet Emily's eye. He hesitated at the doorway, as if searching for some sign of forgiveness, but Emily didn't give him one. She just looked past him, out into the quiet street. Finally, he stepped outside. Her parents were the last to leave. Her father sighed deeply, murmuring, "You've changed, Emily." She looked at him and replied softly, "No, Dad. I finally found myself." Then she closed the door behind them. The sound of the latch clicking felt like the closing of an old, painful chapter. Emily stood there for a moment, letting the silence fill the room again. But this time it was peaceful. No tears came, no trembling, no second thoughts. Just quiet strength. She walked back to her living room, where the sunlight fell gently across the floor. Everything around her, the furniture, the walls, the scent of fresh coffee, belonged to her. It was a life she had built with her own hands, without anyone's help or approval. For once, she wasn't the one left behind. They were. And that was her final revenge, not in anger or cruelty, but in peace and self-respect. She didn't need to hurt them to win. She had already won by standing tall, by surviving, by moving on. Emily sat down, took a deep breath, and smiled to herself. The woman they had once underestimated had become untouchable, not because she was rich or powerful, but because she no longer needed there. That night, Emily sat on her porch with a warm cup of tea in her hand. The evening breeze was calm, carrying the faint scent of freshly cut grass. Her house stood quietly behind her, the lights glowing softly through the windows. It wasn't just a house. It was her peace, her strength, and the proof that she had survived everything meant to break her. She looked up at the stars and let out a deep breath. For years, she had dreamed of this kind of quiet. No yelling, no guilt, no pretending to be okay for people who never cared. Just silence and safety. The same silence that used to feel lonely now felt comforting. It was hers, and no one could take it away. As she sipped her tea, memories came and went like passing clouds. The nights she cried in her car, the mornings she worked double shifts, the years of being ignored by the people she loved. But instead of pain, she felt gratitude. Every struggle had shaped her into the woman sitting there now. Every wound had made her stronger. For so long, she thought revenge would bring her peace. She imagined that seeing her family regret their choices would somehow fix the hurt inside her. But now, sitting there under the quiet sky, she finally understood. Revenge wasn't about making them feel her pain. It was about proving to herself that she could rise without them. She smiled faintly and whispered to herself, "I built this life. I owe no one but me." The words felt powerful, like a soft truth settling in her heart. She realized she didn't need anyone's approval anymore. Not her parents, not Hannah's, not Ryan's. Their opinions didn't matter. Their absence didn't hurt. What mattered was that she had found herself again. Inside, her home felt warm and alive. The photos on the wall, the soft couch she bought after saving for months, the plants by the window, all simple things, but all reminders that she had built this new world with her own effort. Every corner of it carried a story of strength. Emily thought about how different she was from the woman who once begged for love and understanding. That version of her was gone. She no longer needed to prove her worth. She had already done that by surviving, by healing, by choosing peace over bitterness. As the night deepened, she leaned back in her chair, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. The air was cool, the stars brighter than she remembered. For the first time in years, her heart wasn't heavy. It was light, free, and full of quiet confidence. She took one last sip of tea and smiled again. She wasn't angry anymore, and she didn't wish things had gone differently. Everything had led her here, to this moment of calm, strength, and truth. When she finally went inside and turned off the lights, she looked around her home one last time before going to bed. A small smile stayed on her face as she whispered, "I'm home." And for the first time in a very long time, Emily slept peacefully, knowing she had found exactly where she was meant to be. Validation. They had lost her for good, and she was finally free.